welcome to episode 264 of Checkpoint Chat. My name is Alessandro Barbosa. I'm joined, finally, by Matthew Figueroa.
Why do you say finally like it's my fault?
No, it's both of our faults. I realized I hadn't put in it's been a long time thing in my intro, so I had to inject it somewhere.
It has been a long time. Sure, it's been a long time, but finally, after years of waiting, I'm finally joined by my co-host.
Yeah, by my co-host. It's only been 263 episodes. I've been waiting.
Yes, it has been a long time.
He never arrived for the time.is check-in. I just had to do these alone.
After years. My word, but it has been, I think our last episode was in December. And
beginning of December, yeah.
Beginning of December, then we all went on our holidays. We had a glorious December holiday. And then we came back in January, and January was just very busy for both of us. Some people moving into new spaces, some people just being busy in general.
Yeah, I mean, life happens. January comes in and it's like, you had a holiday, that's nice. The world carried on.
And now it's Feb, and here we are. Yeah. Where did the time go? And I was just saying to you, my Feb as well is looking super busy. So that schedule, we're going to have to see what happens. But
yeah, I mean, it feels like this year just really got off to an incredibly fast start. I almost can't believe it's Feb already, but at the same time, January felt like a year long. So
January was long.
Yeah, and I mean, we're like a good week and a bit into Feb as well. It's like before you know it, in that March.
Feb's a short month. You're gonna blink, it's March.
Ready for that Two Oceans run soon. It's gonna be good.
How much your training? How's your training going?
I have not run since mid-Jan when I did that 21k, the one in
you'll be fine.
Bedford View, which absolutely destroyed me. What a run! Holy shit!
That is a tough run.
Route, brutal.
Yeah,
brutal. If you live in and around Primrose, God bless you for driving up those hills every day. My God.
Primrose Hill. No.
Jeez, I've never run a consistent uphill like that. Like ever, just like 6Ks of just consistently uphill, and then having all of that elevation literally disappear in the space of 8 kilometers coming down. It felt dangerous how steep that downhill got. It was not fun.
Do you run down Primrose Hill or up? You know that there's one curvy road that goes sort of towards Macro. Do you run up or down that? Are you running towards Edenvale or away from Edenvale when you're going up Primrose Hill?
No, you're running towards Edenvale because that's at the end. You're running back.
Okay, so you're probably going down that one hill I'm thinking of.
You've kind of from Eastgate all the way up to Primrose, you've just gone up and then you reach the top of that hill, and then it's just an absolute massive downhill till the end.
That part past Eastgate, deceivingly uphill.
Yeah, I didn't realize you go under that little dip that takes you underneath the highway, and I'm like, okay, cool, I know where I am, and it's Eastgate, and it's just this gradual uphill all the way to Bedford, and then you turn the road to Bedford, and then you realize oh, this road is also a gradual uphill. You never notice in your car, obviously. No. And then you turn right at Bedford, and it's just more. That's where it started. It just didn't stop from there. It was I got in, there was 10Ks in, and I was like, this is great. I'm having a great time in this run. It's a little bit challenging. It's not too bad. But from there onwards, I finished under 2 hours by 20 seconds. It was, at some point, I was like, oh, this is not going to be a sub 2 hour run. But
you did it, though.
No, that run was hard. Run was very hard. I'm caught up to a friend in the last K, and he started not super before me. It was just, very busy. Yeah. And I felt so bad for him because he'd been having a tough run.
Yeah.
And he's got a nipple ring. Okay.
Oh no.
And he said he put loads of stuff on his chest and whatever to prevent it, but his whole one side of his shirt was just blood.
Oh no.
He was a Benoni Northerns runner, so he had a yellow and red shirt already, but the yellow part was by his chest. And it was just this massive circular patch of blood because he had chafed so hard where the piercing was, and was just bleeding.
Shit.
And he was in such good spirits, and he was like, whatever. And I looked at, I got to him and I was like, oh, hi, we're nearly there. And I was like, Jesus, what the Like, you look at his, I was like, you're bleeding a lot. He's like, yeah, it's pretty sore. And that was that. Yeah, he was just like, okay. I mean, I'm sure you've run enough to know you've chafed, like, on your chest and nipples before, but never to that degree.
No, yeah, I was going to say, like, I'm very fortunate that I feel like I've chafed, but I've never had, like, anything bad where my nipples hurt.
Oh, you've never even had it like, oh, it's a bit raw or anything?
Maybe like once or twice. I don't know. Yeah, I can't tell you it's been a problem for me. Like, because I know people, this is a very intimate conversation, okay? But some people would like tape over their nipples, for example.
Yeah.
I've never had to do
he
that.
said he wanted to do that, but because of the sweat, it just comes off. I was like, okay, fair enough.
Damn.
I've only ever had it happen like once where it was very uncomfortable, and that was the Soweto Marathon, but that was primarily because the shirt that they gave us for that was very rough. So by the end of it, I was just, it was really rubbing, and it was not fun, and it was not bleeding, but it was incredibly sore afterwards. So not very sensitive area. You don't want that to be wrecked.
We'll see how I feel after a 56K. If I chafe.
Yeah, that's going to be... That's your first time ever doing that, hey?
An ultra, yeah. My goodness.
I back you. Are you doing it with your brother?
No, my brother's not doing that.
Is he not? Okay.
No, but look, I think I'll be fine. I'm training hard. I'm gradually upping my distance every weekend. Getting lots of mileage on my legs. But I think there's like just a mental block. And it is like a large part of running is just wrapping your head around the distance and pacing yourself, whatever. But the last I did a marathon here in the UK because I had to do like a qualifying time for the Two Oceans. So I did I think it was October, November, very flat marathon. Okay, like I'm talking 5 meters of elevation across 42 meters, which is like the dream, super flat. But I just paced myself terribly. So when I was done with that marathon, I just felt awful, like just ill, like wanted to throw up. And I'm like, this isn't normal. Like I've done the Soweto Marathon twice, and even like the first time I was tired, second time went a lot better. But even both of those times, like shit, did not feel like this after my run. So like it just, that threw me. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to do a 56K with elevation. So I'm like making very sure that I'm training hard. I'm getting lots of hills in now. And I'm doing like the exact same routes in March. So they do this marathon. It's called the Thames Meander. It's literally like running along the River Thames.
The River Thames.
Yeah. And they do it seems every 6 months. Like I did the autumn edition now, the spring edition's coming up. So I'm like, cool. That's a good opportunity to refresh my mind, my framing of that run, and just doing marathons in general.
But I assume it had been a while since you had done a full marathon race.
It had been, but I just, it was that thing, I fell into that trap. And it just has happened once to everyone, because I've done it on a 21 once as well. I was like, oh, I'll feel good. And then hated the rest of the run, like actually like ill.
If you pace yourself poorly, it's a bad time.
So I did that over a marathon. So the route is you literally run like, it's 10Ks and then 10Ks back, and you do that twice. So you're doing 221 laps, basically. You run along the river for 10Ks, turn around, come back. Turn around, run 10Ks, run back.
That's almost like doing 4 laps at that point, because it's like there,
so
back,
when I
back.
got back to the start, aka the 21K point, and I had to turn around and do it again, I was like, oh my God,
no,
I've darned fuck up my pacing. Because by that point, I was like, holy shit, how am I going to do exactly that route again now? It's
such a shit realization, because it only dawns on you that you've made the mistake when it's too late to rectify it. I distinctly remember one of the first 21s I did when I started doing them with you. I obviously started with you and your brother, but you guys were well faster than me at that point, still are. And I recall getting to like K9 or 10, and I thought you guys had got quite a bit in front of me, and I realized at that point that you weren't actually that far. I could still see you. And that exact moment, I was like, oh, I fucked up. Like, I should not be running at this pace in the 10K. And that was like one of the worst 21Ks I've ever done, just because the last 10, you're just completely dead. You've just hit a wall and you've still got half the race to go. So
and it's funny.
That said, I've never got to the end of a 21 and been like, cool, I could do this again, like right now.
No.
So I don't know how you do it, honestly.
No, it is just training and a lot of it is just pacing, honestly. If you like, if I told you to do a 30k, for example, you could probably do it. You just have to do it a lot slower than you normally run. You'd be very tired, but you could do it.
Definitely.
So it's that. I'm like, I know I can run a marathon, but now just slapping on an extra 14Ks, I'm like, oh my god, 14Ks is a long.
You're right though. It's a big mental thing as well. It's like I'm telling Shani now because she's doing the Two Oceans 21 and it's the first 21 she'll ever do. And it's like she's putting tons of mileage on her legs, running very consistently, you know, has run a couple of 10Ks on her own, which she never used to do.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of, oh, how am I going to do double this on the day? It's like on the day is a very different prospect. You will, firstly, you will have no choice. You will just have to do it.
They eliminate you if you don't run the half. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get to 12 and you're like, I want to give up, and it's just the guy in the little pink suit with the little mask on. It's just like, and yeah, you just kind of like, you're like, okay, well, I've run 2Ks over 10Ks now, and you get to the 15 or 16K mark, you're like, oh, there's only a 5K left. It's like there's little milestones in your head that you kind of go with.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But it's a fun hobby. It's good. Enjoy killing myself on a Sunday. It's good.
It is. It's a ridiculous hobby, but I love it. It's a weird thing.
Is Lenska doing the 21?
No. So it weirdly enough, the 21's on the Sunday and the Fulls on the Saturday.
The Saturday, yeah.
And like I know they probably do it because logistically managing those two races on the same day must be like insane. But we've got a wedding on that Saturday evening. And it's far, so we're not gonna. She did want to like look into, well, how far is it? Would it be silly to drive back? You know, how are the roads? And we've decided no, we're gonna stay. Like it's a bit far. We're talking like an hour and a half drive back. Like we don't know what time the wedding's gonna end. The run's super early, so yeah, it's just a bit. She would have loved to do it. She was very keen.
So you're gonna run an ultra and then go to a wedding?
I am, and that there's another motivator because I'm like, okay, the wedding starts. It's 3 or 4. So I've got to do an ultra, get home, shower, drive about an hour and a half to get to the wedding and make it. So that is also a motivator. Like I have to finish within a certain amount of time. I can't just like.
And then you just got to pray that they don't that they feed you adequately while they're taking photos. Otherwise, you're just going to expire there in the sun.
Like, why is Maddie in a chair in all these pictures? Like, shame, we couldn't stand.
Coming around with the trays of hors d'oeuvres, and you just like taking whole scoops of them, just like.
Do you have any Energade back in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Could do with some electrolytes, please. A toast is
there's no
Energade bottle.
If you like started just drinking champagne or wine there, you'd actually
I would expire.
Like pass out immediately.
That is hilarious. Yeah. So even that, the start time. In what universe do you pray for an earlier start time? Because I'm like, I'm like, please let it be 5 o'clock, so I have some breathing room to like, you know, not suffer.
They are quite early, the start times.
Yeah, I think I kind of, in my head, if it starts at 6, I'll be okay. But that's like, oh my God, like pushing it because, you know, get home, shower.
I think it does start at 6, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the one I ran the other day started at 6.
I've seen the Two Oceans. I've seen people say their start times are at like 5. I'm like, great.
Because of the seeding, yeah.
Yeah, the earlier the better. So
yeah, why not? Yeah, I actually don't know when we get like seeding times and stuff like that. So curious to see that as well because. Yeah, I don't want to start when the sun is out because the Cape Town gets so hot, you know, even in April. So if it's like very sunny that day, the earlier the better.
Sorry to harp on the subject. We're going to talk about actual games soon, don't you worry. But
that's what you think.
Welcome. We're rebranding. It's Checkpoint Run.
Yeah, exactly. The new year, new topic.
Yeah, we're pivoting hard. But it's funny. I was chatting to my mom. My mom's doing the 21. As well.
Oh, cool.
It's the first 21 she's doing, and she's also training super hard. And she's
Nice.
been asking, like, because I'm doing longer runs in the weekend. She's like, "What do you eat before? What do you drink before? Whatever." And it dawned on me, I'm like, I do drink water before I run, but like I don't get thirsty on my long runs here. And I'm like, well, because it's not particularly hot. I'm like, shit, that's going to be a whole different thing as well. I'm going to go from training in winter sucks. Let me tell you, I've done runs in the morning where it's like, it feels like -4 outside.
No,
oh my God.
Fuck that.
But to pivot to now, it's hot and I'm thirsty. I'm like, I'm not. Yeah, I just need to hydrate.
At least in races, there's loads of water points, and it's very easy to be like, every water point I'll grab a water because it's like every 2K, so you should be hydrating in that manner anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, like you doing your 21K runs alone, it's tough to stay hydrated there. And I think if you're training in the sun here, I mean, I know Shani bought one of those little like running vests, and she's got two of these like water bottles that are completely malleable, so she just shoves them in there. And it's like, yeah, you have to if you're going out for a run by yourself. If you're doing more than 10Ks, you treading on dangerous territory without hydrating.
Does she put those water packs in the fridge before she runs?
Yep.
Life pack. If she was doing longer runs, I'd say freeze them.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I think it would be difficult to get into the running vest there because you have to like finagle them and kind of fit them in. They feel very weird.
No. When my sister and I did the 94.7, I mean that's like also 4 or 5 hour cycle. You go with your backpack, and it was the best. We used to freeze those packs, and then as the race went on, just that constant supply of ice cold ice juice.
And that's like good. Peak summer, so I can only imagine how hot it must be. Like you cycling on the highways there, and it's like 35 degrees out. Like, nah.
Yeah.
No thanks. I need to do this. Someone did it last year for the first time, or that I saw. And I was like, that's a great idea, is go for a run on the highways when they've closed them for the 947.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can go to just like Melrose Arch and run on the highway, have like a 10K run because like the whole highway is closed. It's like, oh, that's really smart.
Yeah.
Unless you get fucking annihilated by someone on a bike, then it won't be great. But I think it'll be fun.
This is a great idea until I got driven over by lots of bikes.
Yeah, a whole peloton of bikes just absolutely killed me. Yeah.
No. Is that a cat?
Yeah, meow. Did you hear that?
It was like a perfect meow. Meow.
Abby is because Shani, I think, went out for a walk, so she's sitting by the window here, screaming, why haven't I been let out too?
She put her paw in the window. She's like, please, don't forget me.
Please take me. She complains a lot when she wants to go outside and no one's listening to it. Like, she's by my feet now, screaming.
No.
It's okay.
Soon.
Yeah, she's funny. You see?
Meow.
Getting good, nice, clean meows for the soundboard.
Nice, yeah. Noise cancellation ain't working.
Just clip them out. Clip them out. Checkpoint chat. We are 20 minutes in and we haven't spoken about video games. That's when you know it's been a while.
We spoke about running. Sorry.
Spoke a lot about running. Running's good.
Apologies.
Get into running and get into video games. It's a great life balance. Keep your heart healthy. Keep your knees relatively healthy, and then keep your fingers healthy with dexterous video gaming.
Of course.
Speaking of dexterous video gaming, there's a game that we both ended up playing just as we kind of finished off last year, and I don't think either of us expected for it to hit as hard as it did. But Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's a bad name for a good game. This is Indiana Jones by way of Machine Games, who previously did the Wolfenstein, revivals, New Order and New Colossus. And, it's been a long time since the New Colossus, and Indiana Jones was announced a long time ago with them attached. And it seemed like, at the time, I thought a pretty odd fit. And even more odd was the whole, this is going to be a first-person perspective Indiana Jones game. But man, this game, it's so good. It just, me coming from the perspective of never having watched the films, just to experience like the interesting sense of exploration in these little open world hubs, the almost comical nature to some of the combat, and just this really good blend of, this is almost like an immersive sim sort of action game with good good stealth and good balance in terms of you cannot take on 5 people at a time in a fight, but you can hold your own against 1 or 2 sorts of thing. It's just a really good mix of action, adventure, exploration, and yeah, I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I think it's exactly to your point of when this game was revealed. It's like, okay, it's an Indiana Jones game. I like the movies, I like the property, but seeing the first person perspective, you think, how does this translate? And sorry, the norm is if it's an action adventure game of this nature where you're exploring tombs and whatever, you look at Tomb Raider and Uncharted, you wonder, well, why would they not go for an over the shoulder third person perspective? And it is this thing of I've seen interviews and stuff, and the sentiment is like, no, we wanted people to like feel, that there are Indiana Jones. They're seeing it from that, that exact framing, and also it's completely different. And I think there's no better feeling than being proven wrong as a gamer in this specific sort of regard, where I think a lot of people look to this game. I don't think you and I were alone looking at this game going, I don't know if this is going to hit. Even just the premise of Indiana Jones, because you think it's not Uncharted and Tomb Raider, they shoot us, right? I mean, there's a lot of exploration, but for the most part, you're hiding behind cover, shooting lots of bad guys. And this game is not that. Indiana Jones is not that. You think, well, how will they pull this off? And let me tell you, they did. Like, what a pleasant surprise. And I'm there with you where I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I didn't expect it to be a bad game by any means, but I did not expect it to hit as well as it did. They completely nailed it. In so many ways. Visually looks gorgeous. Troy Baker, whoa, what a dude! Just nailed. There's so many moments in this game where you're listening, you're like, is this not Harrison Ford that I'm listening to? Because he just pulls off that, just the voice so well. Just phenomenal game, really.
No, yeah, all around, just hits all the right notes. And like you said, I don't think we expected this to be a bad game, but given the struggles that Microsoft was having and, the oddity with, trying to wrap your head around why this approach was taken, I think a lot of people were expecting this to be an okay game.
Yeah.
And an immediate, like, cool, that was a nice experiment. Machine Games can go back to doing Wolfensteins now. But now, I can see them doing lots more of these.
100%, yeah.
The Machine Games found I think a recipe for success here. The follow-up is always the harder one to pull off, I think, because this one comes in with a certain element of surprise. But I'm also, I'm keen to see how, if they tackle a sequel, how they would tackle the sequel, how would they improve upon this formula that they've established here. Because I think it's a really difficult thing that they managed where, like you said, the easier thing would have been to make this an Uncharted-like, a Tomb Raider-like, because those two kind of fundamentally pull from Indiana Jones as a basis for their balance of action and exploration. But like you said, Indiana Jones isn't a mass killer like Nathan Drake or Lara Croft in the sense, and it would feel quite disingenuous to have him like completely slaughter hundreds of people in this game. And I think Machine Games balancing that with a heavy emphasis on hand-to-hand combat, a lot of melee combat, and yes, there is shooting, but the shooting is very much, it doesn't feel as great as a Wolfenstein, and I think that's on purpose because it's not meant to be the core way that you interact with combat. It's very like floaty and weird, and you can tell Indiana Jones isn't a trained mercenary with a gun. He's just kind of making do. Yeah. And you can kind of get through the entire game with, without even shooting a gun, I think,
100%, yeah.
It was probably 10 or a few hours into the game that I remembered I actually have a pistol on me at all times. I just was never using it.
Yeah.
But the balance of that and the balance between that and stealth just feels so fresh and fun, and the ability to kind of tackle a lot of objectives in a way that you see fit is also really good. That's why, to me, it feels a lot like an immersive sim. You've got these open world areas and objectives to complete in them. And it's like, cool, you can sneak into this Nazi camp completely unseen and grab the thing that you need and get out. Or you can do a little bit of poking around the area and find a disguise, that lets you infiltrate this camp without anyone like batting an eye. Or you could try go in arms blazing with a shovel in one hand and ready to just kind of, make figure your way out through combat, like picking up things as you take out enemies and continually taking out more. Like, you have those means to approach it in any way that you want. And the game doesn't try and penalize you for doing one way or the other. It's not like, oh, you should be doing stealth, or, oh, you should be finding a disguise to get through here. It's just really fun to figure that stuff out by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, just to your point there, that is also a big surprise, because then at any point I was thinking, well, then, okay, they're doing Indiana Jones, it's going to be a linear, you're going to basically move from set piece to set piece, and there's nothing wrong with that, I do not expect such an open hub, or so many open hubs that are just playgrounds for you to explore. I mean, that Vatican, the opening one, there's just so much to do there. And when the game starts, I think, like, well, it's the Vatican. Like, how much can they actually put? How long am I going to be in this area for? And it's like, well, turns out you can be there for a very long time if you want to. You can be there.
Some might say too long.
It could be. Maybe it's a bit too long, but I mean, you could spend 10 hours in that opening area alone. You don't have to, but there's enough. There are enough, things for you to poke around into and explore and do there. And I think that's what surprised me as well. Did not expect such a big playground of things to do. It's this mix of, like you said, there's infiltration, but then there's this great mix of, I'm walking past, there's a tomb here. Let me just poke my head in. Oh, there's like a quick puzzle to solve. I got this reward, or I found this thing, and I move on. And it's just that mix of, stealth, a bit of combat, and just puzzle solving. They just pulled it off. It's the only thing I can think of is that they designed this game so well, and I take my hats off to, just whoever pitched this, whoever thought this is the way we have to do this, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like, no, I don't think that's going to work, and it did work.
No, agreed. I think it took a lot of resolve to kind of have this vision for an Indiana Jones game and kind of say, no, this is the way it needs to be done. This is the way we see it working, and we are confident in this approach. Because, I think, like you said, there was a lot of speculation or just like hesitation over the approach, and that was leading right up to the release. Like, you see the gameplay trailers, you're like, oh, why is it first person and then switch to third person when you are doing some platforming? You're swinging from a vine with your whip, or climbing up a wall. Why is that now third person? But the transition between the two is so seamless, and it works. I think Machine Games had a very strong vision from the get-go, and then iterated on that. They weren't dissuaded by, oh, maybe this isn't working, let's alter it, last minute in development. I think that's why it works so well, so cohesively. I do think, if I had to think of the things that really stood out, it's a lot of the set pieces. I know the open world bits, they are very front loaded. Like, you've got the Vatican and Giza, and I think then you have like one more other really big area after that. But it's the smaller areas that stitch together these larger ones that really stood out. I think there's just phenomenal set piece events here that feel like cinematic pieces from the films. But without losing, I never felt like I was on rails. I still felt like I was interacting in those sequences in a very meaningful way, while also being more linearly like pushed in a direction to keep the pace and suspense at a certain level. And then you're able to kind of like, notch that down when you get to these bigger open world hubs and take things at your own pace. I think the one negative I'd say is that these spaces, there's a lot of interesting things to do. Like you said, you happen upon a tomb in Giza and you're like, oh, there's a cool little puzzle here that I get to solve. I think there's a lot of that, but a lot of it falls by the way of some open world bloat. Especially if you get really obsessed with finding every little thing you can in these hubs.
Lots of collectibles and things to do, yeah.
Just tons. And that's not to say that the puzzles for them are boring or bad. It's just that when you're presented with so many of them, it can affect the pacing, I find. It's like you've spent 10 hours in the Vatican, and yes, at that point you feel like the story hasn't really progressed because it hasn't. You haven't given it the space to progress. And that's always, I think, the challenging thing with these sorts of play areas. It's trying to give players a lot of things to do to enjoy the time that they have there, but also trying to control the pace so that it doesn't draw itself out. Like, I finished the game in about 14 hours total, and I poked around a lot in the Vatican, and maybe a bit less so in Giza, and much less so in the final open area. By contrast, you spent, I think it was like 10 hours in the Vatican alone.
Yeah, I think my total playtime was, I can tell you right now, I think my total playtime was about 19, 20, oh no, wait, when was it? I'll tell you right now. Let me just, we whip open this Xbox app of mine. I've uninstalled the game, damn it. Hang on.
That's not too much more, like, say it was 19, 20 hours, that's like 25% more than what I did.
Time played, 1 day, 5 hours, that's not right.
No, yeah, that app is really bad at tracking the time. You'd have to do like an in-game
30 hours
save.
I don't think I played 30, but I did play. I think it was like 22-ish, let's say.
But I know some people who spent the amount of time I did playing the entire game just in the Vatican. And I'm like, you're running into a sort of Dragon Age, Inquisition, hinterlands situation where you get so in the weeds of doing everything in an area, you don't realize that there's so much more outside of this opening area. And by the time you do explore that, you're kind of already burnt out on the formula. So a little bit of refinement there, which is way easier said than done, I think would be top of the checklist for a sequel to me. But beyond that, I think they really nailed this. I think following this up is actually going to be tough. And I think Machine Games is used to that because Wolfenstein The New Order was a really phenomenal game, shooter-wise, and the whole idea of the new Colossus like topping that was difficult, but I feel like they did.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see where they go with this, and for all intents and purposes, it seems like this has been a success for Microsoft in terms of critical reception and player reception. They've had a lot of player numbers, with regards to this on Game Pass and the like, and it's going to come out on PS5 in a couple of months, I think. So, and I think with all the buzz, yeah. I think with all the buzz there, you'll see very strong sales on PlayStation. It's like if it didn't get this critical reception on Xbox, PlayStation players wouldn't be too enticed to, actually pay money for it. So, yeah, I think coming out a bit earlier in the year would have definitely made my top 5 list for sure.
It's in that weird space where it almost came out too late in the year. Because then what happens now at this Game Awards for 2025? Is this a nominee? Does this pop up as like best action adventure game? Because it wasn't last year. It was too late to be eligible for last year. So if it pops up this year, people will be like, Well, I suppose like maybe because it's launching on PlayStation, it'll still be fresh in people's memories. But it feels,
I think that will help for sure. Yeah.
It always feels weird to me for games that launch in November, December. They just get like lost. It feels like when it comes to, I mean, awards aren't everything, but it is nice to see your favorite games win the awards you think they deserve.
Yeah, I think nowadays the conversation outstrips like awards. I get what you mean, but if you look back at say Alan Wake 2, that also came out quite late in the year, and I think it was a bit earlier than Indiana Jones. It was like very late November, but it still omitted it from a lot of awards conversations by then, and I think it would have won a lot more, but the conversation around it was so strong that you talk to someone now and they know that Alan Wake 2 was good. And I think the same is going to be said for Indiana Jones. Like, it didn't win at the Game Awards, it wasn't nominated, but the perception now when you speak to people who, consume games media is that this is a good game.
Yeah.
and that's not lost on people. So I think you're right. When it comes out on PS5, it will get that second wave of popularity, and maybe at the end of the year we see it pop up again at the Game Awards. But I think it's a tough sell to have a game from December 2024 winning a game in an award in 2025 when we still have a lot of the year to go. Who knows? I don't know. It might just be a slow year.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it was any earlier in the year, 100% would have been on my top 5.
Yeah.
Like, no question. It was one of the best games I played last year, and one of the most surprising and most fun experiences I had last year. It was just a great time.
Yeah.
Also just really funny as a game. Like, from a the story perspective wise, there's a lot of not camp. It's just like it's witty and smart, but then from a gameplay perspective as well, like putting loads of Nazi soldiers on very high precarious ledges and being able to push them and hear the Wilhelm scream. It's like, that's cool, man. Like, they've baked in a lot of humor into the gameplay, which is great.
Yeah. I think, and you owe it yourself to at least watch, say, the first movie.
Definitely.
Because I think you as someone who's not watched a movie, you'll play the game like, yeah, this is cool, Indiana Jones, cool character. But then you'll realize how well they nailed the character and the aesthetic, and even the story. The story itself is that classic of there's just enough mystery for you. I was explaining to Lenska, these Indiana Jones and even like Uncharted and Tomb Raiders, it's this thing of it's grounded in reality, but there's always a level of like I say, truth to it, where you go, well, there are pyramids in Giza. Like what if in Giza there is this big thing that leads to another thing, and this thing, it's enough plausibility, like that could happen. That
yes,
this tomb could exist somewhere. There could have been this person who did this thing and built this thing. It's just enough to make you like, it's real. It's obviously not, but it nails that. I think the story itself, as well. I loved the big reveals. Like, it's just, to me, it was such a damn name. Great Circle, not a great name, but
very bad name.
The big MacGuffin or aha that they went to was like, what an interesting thing.
Yeah. It was actually very unexpected. I thought it was quite
unexpected.
clever.
Yeah, I was like,
very,
okay,
very
that's
clever.
Cool little thing to think over. You go, maybe that did happen. Maybe that's the truth,
Wouldn't go that far, but I know what you mean.
It's just enough for you to go like, well, it would explain that, like an interesting theory, So, yeah.
It's a lot of like realism seeped in mysticism by the end of it. And I can see now why games like Uncharted pull from Indiana Jones so heavily,
100%,
because they're the same. It's like your first half of the game is following these little breadcrumb trails to, archaeological sites, and then it starts delving into, there's this lost civilization, or there's this ancient thing that you've known of, but that's actually more of a magical power, or it works in a way that doesn't really fit with reality, but kind of, fits into the realm of not plausibility, but like, this is maybe why an ancient civilization found this weird or interesting. And Indiana Jones, I think, nails that in terms of its MacGuffin in a very, I think, a very entertaining way. It definitely allows for some of the bigger set pieces to be possible, because without that sort of thing, the way they move around the world would not be possible. So it's really cool, really, really cool. And again, a lot of people have said, I think Kervin actually said, this feels so good as a game because it could be an Indiana Jones movie.
100%.
It nails that vibe completely. So I definitely should do myself a favor and watch at least Raiders of the Lost Ark, which, if I'm not mistaken, the opening of the game mimics that film.
100%.
Is it Raiders? Yeah. It's good. I never realized until, I watched a lot of comparisons between the film and the opening of this game, and a lot of people were mentioning that the dude who like follows you into the tomb, the guy with the really odd facial expressions, that actor is the same guy who was Doc Ock in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And I was like, oh my God, it is.
What?
It's the same guy. Yeah, it's wild. You should go look back at that footage, or, you can actually see him. He's much younger, but it's the same actor.
That is unreal.
Yeah. What a glow up from throwaway character in the first 5 minutes of an Indiana Jones film to the greatest Spider-Man villain on screen. I mean, he even came back for the Tom Holland one.
And he was a really good villain. Well, a good character in that movie.
Actual glow up. Yeah.
That's wild. Good God. I love Jones. Stories like that though.
It's like the one you shared today with the voice actress for Kate.
I was like, excuse me?
I had to look it up because I was like, this seems like
I did the exact same thing. I was like, no ways this is true. I was like, I guess it is.
And I didn't realize that the actress in question is so for we just like glossing over the context here, but the voice actress for Caitlin Kierman in Arcane is what's her name now? You posted it in Discord.
She's the actress who played Cho Chang in the Harry Potter movies. And I'm just like, what? Katie
Leung. And I was like, oh God, that. And then I Googled her and it's like, oh, she's 38. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense because Harry Potter was ages ago. But yeah, it's wild that she's just the voice of Caitlin Kierman. I mean, to be fair, I would have never have guessed because I don't even remember what her voice would have sounded like.
But it's just one of those moments. It's like, oh. Like, this is the sort of actress I saw in Harry Potter and a little, like, what did they go on to do? And, like, Arcane is not what I expected them to be.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, quite cool. Cool to see people get their flowers elsewhere. It's great. So, Indiana Jones, fantastic. If you've got Game Pass, you should absolutely play it. I think 100%. It's a phenomenal,
it's a no-brainer,
surprising game.
Play it. Just at least try it.
Especially if you're just a fan of immersive sims, which we are getting fewer and fewer of. Oh my goodness, Abby. If you are a fan of like a Deus Ex or a Prey or games like that, I think Indiana Jones surprisingly scratches that itch, which I was not expecting. And a lot of people are like, oh well, they should have advertised the game like this, and I disagree because I think it's very hard to show off immersive simness without actually playing it. So I think they did it well where they were like, well, we're just going to put this out and people discover it themselves. And I think they really have. So, really good game. I haven't come across a single person who's been disappointed by that game, which is awesome. Microsoft needed a win of sorts, and that was definitely it for last year. And I hope they can carry that momentum this year with, they've got Avowed coming out. And they've actually got a really stacked
big year
beginning of the year. I mean, we had the what's it called, the developer direct a few weeks ago, and it's like Avowed in February. You've got Doom: The Dark Ages in May, which is way earlier than I thought it would be. South of Midnight is April, or
it's April. I think it's April, and then that other game, that Expedition
33 is March or April as well. It's a lot of.
It's just back to back.
All of those games during the direct look great. You got the new Ninja Gaiden coming out later this year. That direct was like a solid like state of intention by Microsoft, being like, we got a lot of cool shit and we don't have to wait till June to show it off. We are putting out all of our cool stuff before we even get to show you what's coming in the next half of the year. I mean, there's a lot of suggestions that Gears of War is coming out this year, the new prequel one, and maybe Perfect Dark in the new year. Like, there's a lot happening at Microsoft. So, also bringing Forza to PlayStation. Big things happening.
What a very wild timeline we live in.
I'm super stoked that more people, if you didn't see the news, Forza Horizon 5 is coming to PlayStation later this year. That game is probably one of the best racing games, if not the best racing game on the market now. So for more people to get the chance to play it, it's super
and it's
great game.
Super casual. You don't have to be like I like myself a good racing game once in a blue moon, but I don't actively seek them out. I played Forza and absolutely loved it. Great game.
Yeah, it's nailed the open world formula for racing that Burnout Paradise kind of like trademarked back in the day and then never ever went back to. So Forza Horizon's just a great game, and casual or serious as much as you want to take it, it's very malleable in that manner. But it's just a fun. I often hop back in every now and then just because it's a really good looking game. So driving around just taking this sights in is a fun time, and sometimes I just want to burn 2 or 3 hours just doing something a bit mindless or casual, and just hopping in for some races is always a great time. yeah, I'm excited for more people to play those games and for Polyphony to see that and be like, shit, maybe we need to make games more frequently now.
That's
Holy
my
crap.
thing. It was just, I mean, I think when Forza Motorsport comes to PlayStation, then Sony are going to start sweating. But even
that'll be a big one.
just have both on the same platform. I mean, that's unheard of. Think of back in the day, it was always, oh, Sony's got Gran Turismo, Xbox has got Forza. Like, you got to choose which one you prefer. You can't have both on the same platform. Now it's like, well, why not?
And it's been like that since the dawn of Xbox. Like Forza Motorsport 1 and 2 on the original Xbox, or 2 might have been on 360 already. But those were big games. It was like, oh, GT has been this huge Sony franchise, and now Microsoft's got their own one.
Yeah.
And I think in the years since, I think Forza definitely gained a lot more ground in that conversation, especially with GT kind of losing its way a bit. And I think in more recent history, they've kind of converged again because Forza Motorsport had a bit of a wobble, and GT, is it 7 on PS4 or 5?
7.
7. That one was like really well renowned, sold really well. But it's been a long time since that game. So yeah, I mean, it's more options for people on PlayStation as well, and we don't get games like Ridge Racer or Burnout, or definitely not Need for Speed anymore because that studio's working on Battlefield. So, if it's only going to be Forza Horizon, let people play that everywhere, I guess. I don't see a downside to it.
No, it's... Yeah, that's a whole conversation for another podcast because we could talk about that for hours. But this whole, I think Xbox, the hardcore fans being very upset that their games are going to other platforms. Like, I get it, exclusivity, like, you bought an Xbox, for that specific thing. But at the end of the day, the gamers win. It's like, it benefits us, actually, if those games sell everywhere. So,
and at the end of the day, people want, as much as people enjoy the fight, between consoles, this whole Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony thing, at the end of the day, having competition is good. And so if Microsoft could only fight Sony on the same grounds of hardware and hardware sales, like, they would no longer be a competitor. They would have disappeared from this race ages ago. And the only people that really hurts is us as consumers, So Microsoft finding a different way to kind of wage this war and stay, not afloat, but like stay competitive is great. There will always be this argument of like, oh, well, this clearly shows that Sony's won this generation. It's like, sure, yeah, in terms of the traditional sense.
Yeah.
But, if Microsoft disappeared overnight, we would lose so many great games. We'd lose so many great franchises. I don't think that's a thing to want or applaud. So, yeah, I mean, we can always be critical of approaches, but I think Microsoft's found a way to make their business work for them, and I hope it continues working because I want to get more and more of their games along with the games that I enjoy from PlayStation. And I think if you think PlayStation or Sony is not going to eventually go down this road, I think that's a bit of naive thinking, because 6 years ago, you would also probably say that they would never put their exclusives on PC. And now every single one of their exclusives comes to PC. Yeah. And the gap between it launching on PlayStation, it coming to PC is getting narrower and narrower and narrower. So it will happen. Will we see Uncharted on Xbox? Maybe not. Maybe not yet. But again, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if we would see Halo on PlayStation, I'd be like, absolutely not, never. That will never happen. And I'm almost certain that's going to happen this year. So things change very rapidly.
I just love that in this whole conversation, Nintendo just don't give a fuck.
Nintendo does its own thing.
In this timeline, like exactly to your point, could I have seen Halo on PlayStation a few years ago? No. Can I now? 100%. It's like, can I see Horizon on an Xbox one day? Like, yeah, maybe. It's not off the table. If they've got to put it on PC, maybe on Xbox one day. At no point does it even cross my mind for a second that I will see Mario on my PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah.
Or Zelda. Nintendo, like, nah, fam. That's our shit. It's not going to happen. I'd never see that happening.
You say that, though, but, I mean, I'm sure we were both around. We had kind of stopped writing at that point, but we were still in the conversation then when it was a year or two before the Switch launching, and, like, the Wii U had gone so poorly. And there were so many op-eds floating about and all this speculation, like, is Nintendo going to just become a third-party publisher? Are they going the way of Sega?
Yeah.
If their next hardware doesn't hit, that's likely what's going to happen. They'll put Mario on a PlayStation or this, and that. And I genuinely think if the Switch had flopped in the same way that the Wii U
probably,
had, I think they would have been forced down the same road that Microsoft has. Two really bad console generations. And, Microsoft didn't have bad console generations like the Wii U did, but if the Switch was another Wii U disaster, like that console sold, 20 million units? Like not even.
Like nothing.
Unmitigated disaster for Nintendo. The Switch saved that company in a way and, propelled them into a whole new direction. And I think you see now with the Switch 2, they're like, we are happy with this approach and we think this is a recipe for success until we need to pivot again. And that's why they are able to do whatever the fuck they want. It's not through sheer luck, but they definitely could have had a very different history if the Switch hadn't arrived and hit in the way that it did.
Shit, yeah. Boy, did that Switch hit.
Yeah, geez, what the latest financials came out, it's hit like 155, I think, million sold.
Yeah, it's like one of the best-selling consoles of all time.
A combined, it's like sold more consoles than pretty much every other console Nintendo's made combined, or something like that.
It sold.
I think the forecasts for the Switch 2 launch, are higher than all GameCube sold already, which is crazy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Switch has sold more than the PlayStation 2 now.
No, not yet.
It's coming. It's coming up.
It's getting close. Yeah, I think it's just about to pass, or has just passed the Nintendo DS. So the Switch is either at 150 or 155. I can't recall, but if I'm not mistaken, when I read the figures, they're like 10 million behind the PS2.
Which that is crazy purely because the PS2, if you don't know, for context, that console existed for like 13 or 14 years. It was like an unusually long period for a console to exist, and its PlayStation 2 was super fucking popular. Like, great console, was around for over a decade. It hit this milestone.
The cheapest DVD player on the market as well.
Yeah, it hit this record of 160 million, whatever it is, and you just think, well, nothing's ever going to top that unless it exists for 2 generations, like this very rare instance, until the Switch came along. The Switch is nearly there after 8-9 years now, which is just,
I always thought it was going to catch it. I don't know, like this past year has been a bit rough for the Switch just because like the software has slowed down and the sales have slowed down. I mean, by Nintendo standards, they've slowed down far more than they anticipated. Like they've slashed their forecasts for the next quarter, and so will they catch the PS2 eventually? Maybe, but I think Nintendo is now ready to move on. Like they have seen, the most that the Switch can offer, and I think you'll get a bit of a boost when the Switch 2 comes out, but games like Metroid Prime 4 still come out on the original Switch. But I think once the Switch 2 hits the market, you're going to see like Switch sales absolutely plummet. So who knows? Yeah, I also don't think the Switch 2 is going to be the runaway success that the original Switch was. It'll be interesting to see how it stacks up. It's also, wholly dependent on price now because there's all the speculation with all the world events happening that this thing might be more expensive than people want it to be.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think we're going to learn a lot of that very, very soon. I mean, that direct's happening in April, so we'll know probably then. It is nice in Nintendo to put it the day after April Fools, so we get that bullshit out the way.
That would have been great. Joke's on you. We're actually launching the Wii U too.
Actually launching the Switch 3 with Half-Life 3.
Oh my god, imagine. Speaking of Half-Life.
Yes.
What a pivot.
Fucking segue. Jesus.
Hang on,
Is it a great segue if you constantly point it out though? I still think it is. Come at me.
You pat
it's like when you tell a really
like,
good joke and you smile at the person and they've absorbed the punchline, but they do not like the way that you have enjoyed them absorbing the punchline. You're like, I refuse to laugh out of spite.
My God. Sorry, I'm trying to timestamp here, but I'm busy ruining my sheet.
Yeah, no, I've completely wrecked your timestamps here by just deviating.
No, how dare you? Half-Life. So let me tell you, with all the things that were happening around Half-Life 2 last year, it was 20th anniversary of the game, which, good God, did that make me feel old. because
Hell yeah.
I think we at that point in our lives where I mean, I remember my parents and my aunts and uncles going, the old faithful, oh, you're growing up so quick. When last time I saw you were this high, and oh, in my day we used to do this. I'm that person now where if something is mentioned, I'm like, hold up, are you telling me Half-Life 2 came out 20 years ago? Like, shut the fuck up. That's impossible.
It just feels impossible
20
because
years
like
could have
games
gone.
don't feel like they've progressed enough since then.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, what happened in the last 20 years? Like, shit, how much has happened? So yeah, anyways, and there's also all these rumors like, ooh, like maybe now Half-Life 3 is actually kicking around at Valve HQ because, there are just all these rumors and blah, blah, blah. So long story short.
I really thought it was going to happen at the Game Awards. I was convinced.
Yes. Yeah. You had me convinced, like, damn, Jeff,
I was
show us
convinced.
Half-Life 3. So I thought, damn, I played Half-Life 2, I think literally once around launch when Steam was conceived. I had to update my game via a 56k modem, and boy was it a shit time on Christmas Day, dying to play the sequel to one of the best games you'd ever played, and then having to wait hours and hours for this stupid online platform that you needed to play an offline single player game, which was just beyond comprehension back then. It still is today, to some degree. But yeah, I played Half-Life 2 20 years ago, and I thought, well, let me see how this thing holds up all these years later. Like, I know the main beats pretty much, but I've forgotten a lot of the details. And if Half-Life 3 were to just land tomorrow, like, shit, I'd want a crash course. And let me tell you, this game, despite being 20 years old and despite having some aged things about it, holds up really, really well. Like insanely so, to the point where I'm thinking, shit, I didn't realize how revolutionary this game was back then. I mean, it's 20 years ago. I was much younger. I appreciated gaming better as a much older, more experienced gamer. Looking back now, I can go like, damn, Valve really did some good shit with this game. Like, there's a reason it picked up so many Game of the Year awards and what's so beloved. And it really pushed, like Half-Life 1 did, it pushed the first-person medium or genre forward in ways you would never expected. Just everything from, even visually, like, granted, it's not the best-looking game by today's standards, but looking at the game, I was like, shit, this still looks really good for 20 years ago. And it's exactly what you said. You think, how far have games come in 20 years? Like, it feels, it's not like we're jumping from the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, to PlayStation 2, but you think games have come a long way, but Half-Life 2 still looks good. That water, like, holy shit.
Yeah.
How do they do this? Even the lighting, because then you start thinking like, well, okay, like, ray tracing was a thing that came about like 4 or 5 years ago, and then before that was, you kind of sit and you have a little bit of a retrospective moment going, well, what was lighting back then? And I think Half-Life 2 was a pioneer in a lot of ways with that. And then
absolutely, yeah.
Particularly with physics. I mean, that gravity gun.
Yeah.
Even I sat and I thought, I'm like, even today, I can't name a single game where there's a similar, I think it would be just straight up theft of the gravity gun in Half-Life. Like, how do you mimic that without being called out? But I can't think of another game that has like that weapon, that thing that is so integral to the experience, where it's a weapon and a means to solve like the countless puzzles that are presented to you. And I think what I really like about the game is how it does balance. It's this all-out classic first-person shooter. There's health packs and there's like energy/armor that you pick up off the floor, and there's different weapons you got to cycle through. But then you like run into a room. It's like, I've got to get up there. How do I do that? Oh, I've got to solve this quick environmental puzzle, and it just feels natural. That's it's not like you walk into a room and it's just labeled puzzle room, whatever. It just, you walk in like, oh, like I've got to use my brain. And that back then was just like not a thing, just phenomenal game. I was only going to play Half-Life 2, ended up playing episode 1 and 2 as well, because like, damn, that's
so good.
I got to remember how the story pans out, and that ending of episode 2, I forgot what an emotional gut punch that is, and how much of just the cliffhanger it was. Like, I just straight up forgot. I'm like, how have they not done Half-Life 3? Like, just straight up, how have they left us hanging? And I've not played Half-Life Alex, and I have not read.
I was about to say you
I've
need
not-
to find a way to play
I've
Alex.
not read.
Yeah.
I'm like obviously on purpose not reading the wiki, because I've had people like you say, and I've seen online people say it recontextualizes or reframes the ending of Half-Life Episode 2.
Yep.
And all I think is,
Which is a lot of the reason why people think a 3 is coming, because why do that?
Yeah.
Why make such a big change to arguably the biggest cliffhanger in games if you're not going to explore
do
that?
something.
Yeah, you need to find a way. I mean, even if there's someone you know here in South Africa that has a VR headset that you can borrow for the month that you're here, because it's not a long game. Like it's it's like a Half-Life game. It's like 12 hours or so.
That's still pretty long for a VR game, though.
It is, yeah, but it's like, you can play an hour or two at a time and get a lot out of it. And with so many headsets now, the ability to play like wirelessly from a PC and stuff, it's so easy to get into Alex nowadays. It's the top tier game, like still to this day the best VR experience and one of the earliest ones. Just nothing's come near it in terms of scope and creativity, I think. And I think you could say the same for Half-Life 2. It pioneered, firstly, just story-driven first-person shooters. That happened with the first game, and then they really nailed it with the sequel. And I think we got a lot of story-based first-person shooters in the years following that. But like you said, going back to Half-Life 2 is such a unique experience, because I don't think a lot of games do or ever did what it does. The thing I get from it is a confidence in the people that play it to understand the rules that it presents. Like the documentary that Valve put out last year about the 20th anniversary of Half-Life 2 is very, very insightful in this sort of thing, because you hear the designers talk about how they explain the physics system to players through contextual hints. Like there's a really early scenario where you've got like a plank that's on like almost like a seesaw. And the only way out is to figure out like to take a cinder block and put it on one end and realize that, these things around me, they all contain weight and they can all affect the world in a specific way. And not long after that, you're presented with a similar scenario where you have to drop a cinder block from a high level to basically propel you up in the same manner. And I think a lot of games they're not confident enough to let players figure that stuff out. So a lot of it is scripted. A lot of it is very out of your control or very in your face. Like, this is how this thing is achieved.
Yeah.
Whereas Half-Life is, here are the tools. Here's this very physically based world. There are definitely ways we want you to interact with things, but you have to figure those things out. Like rolling explosive barrels into those little things that hang from the ceiling with their tongues out and then shooting that to kill a lot of them. Like, you don't have to do that. You can get around them in other ways, but it's super fun to do that,
Yeah.
I think Half-Life 2 especially just nails that sort of thing. And I think that's what makes it feel so timeless, is because it still feels fresh and interesting and unique.
Yeah.
And like you said, it looks good because I think it's got such a strong sense of art direction as well.
Yeah.
That's great art very rarely ages. I think that's why you can play a game like BioShock now as well, and it just looks and feels good, really good. It's got a sense of place. It doesn't rely on just ultra realism to get that across. So yeah, it's a great game. I played them for the very first time, believe it or not, after playing Alex. I'd never played them, so that was like I inversed the story there. But I mean, I played Black Mesa, which is a remake of the original Half-Life, and then the rest of them like a couple of years ago. It's still so good.
Yeah.
To
go back,
I'm excited for that ray tracing patch that's coming out for Half-Life 2.
That example you said about the plank and like having to weigh down on side. I remember that so well, playing that, going like, how the hell do I get out of here? And then going like, hold on, like no ways. There's no ways I've got to wait, and doing it and going like, oh my god, like of course, like the whole thing is physics in this game, and just like I remember being blown away, going like, holy shit, because that was not a thing in games. Today, it's like a given. I mean, even in most games today, it's like there aren't necessarily like weight based things, but that is just unseen back in the day of things having like a physical weight to it. And even just the last thing I'll say. problem solving that gravity gun must have drove those devs mad. Because I
can't
think
imagine. Yeah.
I like the players picking up and just yeeting things all the time. Well, at least I am. I don't know about everyone else. But I mean, how do you, especially like 20 years ago, how do you stop machines from like not imploding or things falling out the map? And even one thing I don't think people think about enough is like players can very easily like kill themselves. You know, if you're in an enclosed space, I don't think I had a death once where like, oh, this thing rebounded into me, because I think they've figured out how to hard code away. I mean, it can happen, don't get me wrong, but the players should die a lot more than they do. And I firmly believe there are systems in place to stop that from happening, and they had to do that because, it's a bloody gravity gun. You can do whatever the hell you want with it.
It's like a delicate balance of making it feel very physically real and realistic, but also tweaked in the way that makes it still fun without breaking that illusion of realism. And I think that is such a difficult thing to get right, because, too much on one side makes it frustrating because it's too realistic, and then by virtue it's not as fun. And too much the other way, it becomes, you lose that illusion because you feel like you're being guided too much. Like you don't actually have as much control as it's being promised. And I mean, if you look at some of the best games in recent memory that are systems driven in the same way, it's that balance that really makes them. Like a Breath of the Wild, has this physics system that allows you to do the most absurd shit in it. And part of the fun is figuring out, it's finding the limits of that.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's just a base physics system that lets you do anything. Like Nintendo definitely had to shave around the edges to make sure that it was still fun, but the freeform creativity is still there. And I think Half-Life nailed that 20 years ago in a much smaller scope, but it's still there. You can still go into Ravenholm and have a lot of fun throwing around buzzsaws and finding creative ways to kill things there. It's just really, really good. Do you want to play a little game, because you got me thinking about 20 anniversaries? So I'm looking at games that came out in 2005.
I know.
Kind of wild. So there's a list here on Wikipedia of the most critically acclaimed games of the year. There's obviously loads more, but these are all the games that scored within like 87, 88 to 100. A lot of 90s in this list.
Is it 2004, 2005?
2005. We're talking about 20 anniversaries this year.
Oh, for this year. My God.
Some wild ones. Resident Evil 4.
What?
Yeah, Resident Evil 4.
Just hang on, just hard cut to 20 years ago. You've just played Half-Life 2, and then the following year they're like, Resident Evil 4 is coming.
January 11th, 2005 on GameCube.
What?
Metacritic score of 96.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal game.
Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, which I still maintain is the best one in the series.
Out. Was that the third one? In the
so
original
there was Splinter
trilogy.
Cell, then Pandora's Box, then
Chaos Theory was the third one.
Yeah,
it was a good one.
Very good game.
Yeah,
very good game. It's funny though that came out in 2005, and Assassin's Creed Shadows is referencing that in terms of how it handles light. It's like, oh, you can extinguish light sources for stealth. It's like,
20 years ago.
Like Chaos Theory. Yeah, 20 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, that is a big deal in Splinter Cell, was shooting out lights.
Huge deal. Yeah, it was like, shoot out lights, now you can hide in the shadows that it's created. Yeah, crazy.
Okay. Good job, stuff.
Few other ones, yeah. The first God of War.
Wow, that is...
Which is a weird one, because that feels old to me. So it's like,
it
I
feels
can see that 20
older
years ago.
because it's... Yeah, but still, I almost feel like it would be older, given that it's been rebooted and stuff. But yeah.
That's true. You know. There's some wild ones, yeah. Battlefield 2. What a game. GTA San Andreas.
Yes. Still arguably the best GTA out there. I thoroughly enjoyed that game. And even to speak on that for 3 seconds, San Andreas was like, holy shit, you can go to the gym in this game. You can you can get buff in this game, or you cannot gym and you'll end up putting on weight and getting slower, which was just like unheard of back then.
Just like a wild open world, like the real the pinnacle of like, this is what games can be. You know, GTA 3 was like, oh, open world games, cool.
Yeah.
But San Andreas is like, look at this shit.
Yeah.
You know. Last three. Guitar Hero, the first one. Which I feel like no one ever played, because I only really remembered Guitar Hero getting
3.
popular with Guitar Hero 2 and 3. Yeah.
3 was the
Weird.
one I feel that with it, that franchise that hit its.
But 3 was
like
huge
peak.
because you were on the cover, you know, in your
Of
top
course.
hat and your glasses. Yeah.
Of course.
Burnout Revenge, which is a phenomenal racing game that I still play to this day. And then last big one here is Shadow of the Colossus.
Fuck. What was Nintendo doing in 2005? That's GameCube era, so that was like Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, so this year for Nintendo they put out Mario Kart DS, so the DS was out.
Oh, the DS was out, yeah.
The DS was out. What the fuck? That's
DS was a great
okay.
console. I thoroughly love my DS.
Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow came out on Nintendo DS. Advance Wars, Dual Strike,
Okay.
Nintendogs,
the true hit of 2005.
Animal Crossing Wild World. Just to show you what a different time this was, of the top 10 best-selling games in 2005, one of them was Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith.
Wow, is all I can say. Is that on the Nintendo systems?
No, that was multi-platform. It was also the second Star Wars game on the top 10 best-selling list behind Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah, Battlefront 2 makes more sense.
That was a fucking great game, but Revenge of the Sith?
Revenge of the Sith.
I played that game. That game was ass. That game was terrible.
Yeah,
people were still figuring out that movie tie-in games were bad.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, back then it was just normal. Like big movies came out, there'll be a game that goes with it to some capacity. It doesn't matter how good or bad.
Every single Harry Potter movie got a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Wow. So, I mean, what's the last movie to game that you know of?
That's a good question. Now we just get like games based on movie properties, but not necessarily adapting the game. That's a good question.
We're getting
the last
movies
one?
based on movies and series just based on games more than anything else today.
True that. Yeah, it's
My
completely
goodness,
reversed.
this is reversed now. What was the
I
last
can't even
movie?
remember.
Fuck, this is a good question. What was
Because they made some James Bond games, but even those became their own
on a
thing.
Movie.
Trying to think. It must have been ages ago by now. Like, I can't recall a recent example.
Yeah, a Reddit thread a year ago titled "What happens video games based off of every single movie." It's this exact conversation we just had. Person's
Shocker.
like, I remember growing up in the early to mid 2000s and make a video game for just about every movie out there. The Lord of the Rings, which were actually really good. Revenge of the Sith, Chicken Little, The Lion, the Witch, The Wardrobe, The Incredibles, Spider-Man, etc. I'm not saying they were all good by any means, but it's kind of weird that one day that all just stopped.
The Spider-Man movie games were good. They were fun.
I remember the
them.
first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man at a time.
The first one was wild though because you couldn't go to the floor. You couldn't go to the ground.
No,
like
you were just
would
up
swing
in the
around,
sky.
but it was only skyscrapers. And then the second one came out. It's like, yo, this is an open world. You can walk on the street. It's like,
yeah.
The first one is like if you got too low, you just died. Which is just going back to it. It's like, what the fuck is this thing?
I love this. One of the top comments. The will there be a Stampede level of Lion King for Sega Genesis immediately popped into my head. It was traumatic. Okay, it was a hard level.
There was some good movie tie-in games. Like a lot of the animated stuff. Like you go back and play Hercules on PS1. What a game!
Oh my god, yeah,
fucking fantastic game. But then they also got like absolutely ass because they were just like, rushed out to match the release of the film.
100%.
You had a Da Vinci Code video game. I distinctly recall. Yeah, there were weird ones. There were CSI video games.
That I can buy.
Yeah, what a wild time. It just used to be so much of that shit all around. The B tier video games disappeared. Yeah.
Oh no, wait, no, this doesn't make sense. It's the other way around because I asked ChatGPT. Okay, because this is where AI wins my heart. Because Google you can sit for hours looking, but ChatGPT you can just ask it a question, but it didn't help. because it's like
I did it not.
the most recent video game adaptation of a film is the Lego Movie 2 video game. February 26,
fair,
2019.
but
That's fair. Blah, blah, blah.
That feels like cheating, though.
Yeah, it feels like it's Lego. It's worth noting that while the Lego Movie 2 video game is the most recent film-based video game, the industry has seen a decline in such adaptations in recent years. Yeah. But then it's got like some sources where it flips. It's like we had a Borderlands movie, which is like a recent movie based on video games.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad times. Bad times.
Bad times.
There used to be. I used to really enjoy the James Bond adaptations. They had like Tomorrow Never Dies. They had a. I'm trying to recall if they made any of the Daniel Craig era Bonds. They had a James Bond game called, I think it was Bloodstone or something, and that was with Daniel Craig, but it wasn't based on a movie. It was
its own thing.
Yeah, because they had a lot of those. They had like James Bond, Agent Under Fire. They had Nightfire, which was really good. Which all had the likeness of the actor at the time, but they weren't specifically based on a film.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times. What a weird time for video games. Like, so much has changed in 20 years and so much hasn't. So it's just fascinating to look back. But yeah, happy 20th birthday, Resident Evil 4.
Shit. That remake, really good as well.
Yeah, we got a remake before a sequel to Half-Life. Who would have guessed?
Shit.
Yeah.
You put it
in 2 years' time, it will be the 20th anniversary of games like Bioshock, Portal.
That is insane. Like 20 years
just
ago.
An insane thing to think.
Oh,
I mean, 2007 is renowned for being like one of the best years for video games ever.
Yeah.
So we are fast approaching the 20th anniversary of that year.
Oh my God.
Mass Effect.
Good God.
Yeah.
Speaking of Portal, though, we're gonna land this plane soon. Don't you worry. But speaking of Portal, it's I mean I knew this, I remember this, but it's wild that in Half-Life 2, the end of episode 2, it is like, oh, there's the ship called the Borealis. Okay. Eli Vance is like, oh no, you must destroy it, and Dr. Klein is like, oh yeah, like our competitors at Aperture like did, you know, they didn't follow protocol, blah blah blah. And you just think like, okay, they had clearly like Portal. For those who don't know, the whole thing is like you are in Aperture Laboratories, and they've got the portal gun, and there's a whole lot of shit going on there, whatever. But you have to think that Marvel, Valve had, they must have had like a structure penned out for this. You know, I don't know what it looked like. Was it a Half-Life 3 is you get to play as is it Shell from Portal 2 or Gordon Freeman? Like they must have had some or other thing where these two intersected, and I don't know, maybe they're just like, it's not going to work out. But man, like, what was it? Were they going to give Gordon Freeman a portal gun? I haven't watched it. I must watch it.
It's good because they have some. They speak about some of those ideas there, and they speak about like what the big gameplay hook would have been in Half-Life 3, and they had started prototyping it. It was like in the the Arctic Circle with the ship, the Borealis, in the snow. They had some cool ideas. Didn't go as far as the portal gun, as far as they said, but there was like some cool shit in there that I think would have been really, really neat. But yeah, I think they had that all mapped out, and then the documentary basically just, you know, they worked on Left 4 Dead 4, and they just felt like the industry got away from them in terms of it's been too long to come back to this thing, and no one really has the desire to do it. And so I respect the decision of not coming back to it for the sake of coming back to it, but also just like it would be cool if they did, you know. Yeah.
This is the year. Maybe.
I tell you, there's way more smoke than there has ever been. I genuinely think, you know, I said this for the Game Awards, but I think it would be crazy for us to get through the entire year without some mention or some hint that it's coming. So, and Valve does that stuff. They just put out Alex on a random Monday. They're just like, oh cool, here's a new Half-Life.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It'll be very interesting.
I think I mean, like they've had some flops, like pour one out for Artifact, but in terms of you know, like just their general intellectual properties that they've come up with, like Half-Life, Portal, all of these things, they're just so good. Like Valve makes phenomenal games. Even
They do.
like Dota 2, I know it's based on a property. Team Fortress based off like an existing thing. Left 4 Dead was also like a brand new thing, came out of nowhere. Deadlock now, like it's a MOBA, yeah, but it's a unique MOBA, and I think it's got the legs to be really fucking good when it launches. Like Valve still knows a thing or two about making games. I mean, like you said, Half-Life Alyx still the best VR game, and that just came out of nowhere. Valve were like,
Yeah.
we'll just like dip our toe into VR and like we'll just do it really fucking well.
A lot of this stuff is hardware driven as well. They, Half-Life 2 really capitalized on the fact that graphics processing was getting a lot stronger, and CPUs could handle the sort of things that their physics wanted to. And Alyx was this whole new VR platform that they wanted to experiment with. And you're hearing a lot now that Valve is pushing into like more PC centric stuff. They've got the Steam Deck. They want to make SteamOS a platform for PCs. There's this rumor that they're making a console-like experience, which is just like another crack at Steam machines. That sort of thing begs the question, like, what game drives that? And I think a Half-Life 3 could definitely be on there.
Yeah, you buy SteamOS, you get a free copy of Half-Life 3.
Exactly. Boom.
Good God.
Done.
Yeah.
Done. I tell you now, the day that SteamOS becomes available, like at a desktop level, I'll change. Absolutely, like immediately. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Wild. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, what a time to be alive indeed. That has been episode. What is this now? 264.
2 Nintendo 64.
2 Nintendo 64s of Checkpoint Chat. We will be back very soon because the games they are starting now. The got Avowed coming up. Have been playing it. We'll be able to talk about it next week. And then we've got a bunch of stuff coming in Feb, if I'm not mistaken.
Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter, yes.
Goodbye, life.
Monster Hunter Wilds. That is going to be interesting. I'm very keen to play that on my potato PS5. I don't know if you saw the PC requirements, and there's a benchmark tool you can download off Steam to benchmark your PC. That game is tough to run. It is.
It looks like ass on PS5. I'm very sorry.
Which is wild because it's in that RE engine, which is so good and optimized. And I'm hoping they kind of figure that stuff out because it would really suck if it only looks great on the Pro. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm curious and I'm keen to see how it plays out, and I want to get into it now when it's new as well. Very excited to play that. But yeah, there's stuff coming, so we'll be around to chat about it. Until then, thank you so much for coming back and listening to us after this extended break. Thank you to Matty for finally being on the show.
After 20,
it's been a
20
long
years
time coming. We tried to get him as a guest so many years ago, but now he's back for real.
Unreal.
It's good to be back, and we shall see you soon. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe. See you next time. Goodbye.